Where's the fish?
Hey guys, this is Jeremy with TFC. Anytime you've got an inflatable boat, doesn't really matter whose it is, at some point you're going to run into a problem with it. You're going to hit something, you're going to drag it over a rock, you're going to hit a beaver chew, and you're going to have a deflation of some kind. Whether you fix it on the river or you're able to limp it home and fix it, we want to talk about what you're going to do, the best way to get that fixed, to get you back on the river as soon as possible. So we're going to talk about patching and repairing a PVC inflatable boat today. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to recognize that you've got some type of a deflation. Whether it's severe, minor, your tubes are going to get soft, and it's typically going to happen to you when you're out on the river. So what you're always going to want to carry with you while you're on the river for sure is tear aid. So this is a really, really sticky adhesive, and it's going to take care of probably, you know, anything bigger or anything smaller, I should say, than about a ½ inch tear. You're going to probably be able to get yourself down the river without doing a full-blown patch. So on this one in particular, that's what happened to us. We were at the put-in, we started getting everything nice and tight, ready to float, and all of a sudden it started getting soft again. So the first thing you've got to do when you recognize that you've got a rupture of some kind is figure out where it is and how severe it is. Most of the time, you're going to be able to use tear aid or a substance like this. There's a few of them on the market. Gorilla Glue actually makes a Gorilla Tape that we actually use, and that's actually what we used on this. But tear aid works good, that Gorilla Tape works good, and it'll get you through the day. So we're going to talk about doing a full-blown patch, not just an on-site or in the field repair to get you down. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to pump this thing up nice and hard so that you can figure out pretty easily where your tear is. We've got a table set up. I like to have a nice flat surface to work on, get it up off the ground so it can be clean and it's easy to work on. I just set up a couple sawhorses with some plywood here. You can do whatever is easiest or that you have available. I've got this thing already filled up. We're going to turn it over. This one's pretty easy to see. We knew where the rupture was just because we found it on the, but this right here that we did this with, this was our temporary patch. So this is about a ½ inch tear that we got in the bottom of this. So it went down pretty quickly. So what you would typically do, and I'll show you here in a minute, I'm going to pull this off and then we're going to soap this up and clean all this up and get ready to patch it. But we'll show you here in a second what that does. Really pretty easy to tell where this is. Water just pouring out of it. One of the biggest things that you want to do is you want to get the whole area really clean. Make sure that you've got no dirt or any other residue left from on the river before you start getting ready to do this patch. We're also going to clean it with MEK, which I'll show you in a minute. Now that we've identified where our failure is, the first thing you want to do is, this one's big so it's not that important, but if it was a smaller pinhole or a couple pinholes, you just want to go ahead and mark those. So I'm just going to put a circle around right there where it is. This is a good one for us to do for you because it's right on the seam of the double bottom. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging than what it typically would if you don't have 2 layers. So this will be a good one to work on. So when you're doing a patch, a full-blown patch of PVC, you don't want to use sharp corners or corners of any kind. You want to do your patches round if you can. Typically, I use the bottom of the adhesive of this polyurethane, and that usually gives me a pretty good patch. As you notice, you're going to want to have about, if this is our rupture, you're going to want to have about 1 inch of clearance around the whole thing, if not more. So if you notice, if I lay this over the top of my rupture, that's going to give me about 1.25 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a circle around where I'm going to patch that. And then I'm going to make a template of the same thing for my patch. Now you're going to want to deflate this boat here in a second, but I just wanted to show you why it's blown up like this, what that's going to look like. So then I'm going to take my material and then I am going to do the same thing. So I'm going to use the exact same template and I'm just going to make a circle on this. Then I'm going to cut this out. The reason I do this is we have to treat and prep both the patch and the bottom of the boat with MEK because we want to rub this finish off of this boat and off of the back side of the patch. That's going to let the polyurethane adhesive really seat to the material. but we don't want to go all the way outside because we want to keep the integrity of the finish of the rest of the boat. So that's why we want to not just rub it all over. You want to use the MEK sparingly. MEK stands for methyl ethyl ketone. It's basically just a really heavy duty solvent, and it will eat through completely a PVC boat or a Hypalon boat if you use too much or you continue to rub. So all we're going to do is lightly rub it, and I'll show you that here in a second. So we've got our MEK, our solvent. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a little bit on here on a rag, okay? Then we're just going to take the area, we're going to go around the edges, out to all the way to the edges, paying special attention to the location at the joint, the seam. We're going to take that finish off that I talked about, that shiny finish. We're going to do the same thing to the back side of the patch. So the patch is going to be here. We're going to take all of that off. Just give it a quick rub down. You don't have to press really hard. You don't have to really get very aggressive with it. All we want to do is take that shiny finish off and make sure that that's going to adhere and that the urethane glue is going to hold. So now that we've got that prepped, it's time for the glue. So when you buy a TFC hydro sleigh, it's going to come with a patch kit. So in that patch kit, you're going to have some PVC that is the same color as your boat. It's going to come with a wrench for taking out the valves if you have a valve leak. This is for different types of valves. We have Leafield 7 valves, and you're going to use this guy right here. You can change those or fix them, or if one were to fail down the road, you can replace those pretty easily. It's also going to come with urethane glue. It's a two-part, so it's similar to contact cement. So it's got an activator, small tube of activator. I believe this is a 50-to-1 ratio, but the activator is what dictates the cure time and how long you need to wait. So it doesn't have to be an exact science. It really is supposed to be 50-to-1, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, particularly if you're on the river, you don't have a way to measure it. A couple drops, and you only need to use, this is reusable. You don't have to do the whole thing. So if you're out on the river and you needed to do a stream side repair, it was a bad repair and you didn't have anything else to repair it with, if you've got your patch kit, you take this, you can pour it in the top of the lid if you needed to. This can be your mixing tray. You can mix it up. It's also going to come with a brush. So we've got our brush right here. So it's kind of got everything that you need. The only thing that you might want is a pair of scissors if you needed to cut out the shape. But in a pinch, you could use a knife. You could use whatever you needed to. But this is going to come with your boat. If you take this with you out on the river, you're going to be able to fix any repair that you needed to. Really important, guys. If you're going to be out on the river, taking this repair kit with you is a must. You got to have it with you. And I add to this the tear aid or the waterproof Gorilla Tape, something that's a quick fix, but you should never be out on the water without this because it's going to happen. They always say that there's two types of boaters, those that have flipped and those that haven't yet. There's also two other type of rafters, those that have ruptured a raft and those that haven't yet. It's going to happen, so make sure you've got this with you. Okay, that should be enough glue. Going to take a couple drops of the activator. There it comes. Okay, a little bit of activator. And I am just going to use some zip ties, hard plastic, and I'm going to stir that activator all around in here. We're going to mix that up really good till all that yellow is gone. And I will tell you, the more activator that you use, the more yellowish this will turn. It means that the faster that it will cure faster, but at the same time, it will have more of a yellow hue. So if you have a light colored boat and you don't want excess yellow glue sticking out around your patch, be aware of how much activator you're using. Okay, we're going to apply our first coat. So this is going to be 2 coats that we're going to put on this. So we are just going to get this on here, a nice coat going around the edges of our pattern that is still left behind. Making sure we spend extra time there on the seam. You can go outside of the lines a little bit if you want. Really, it just depends on how much excess glue you want around your patch. It's not going to hurt anything if you do use more. It's just going to be a little bit more glue that you're going to see on the outside there. Okay, we got that one nice and coated. We're going to let that dry. Now we're going to do the same thing here with our patch. Making sure I go all the way to the edges with the glue. We want every inch of that to be adhered. If you've got a table or somewhere to put this down on, then you don't have to get this on your fingers, but it's not that big of a deal to me, so I just hold it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for 3 to 5 minutes. It's important, what you're looking for is this is not going to stay tacky. You want it, it will be cool to the touch, but it won't be wet and it won't be tacky. So we want this to basically thoroughly dry before we do the second coat. Again, if you've ever used contact cement, this is a chemical reaction, the glue to the glue. It's not an adhesive where you're looking for it to be tacky. It will stick once you put the two together. So now we're gonna let these dry. We've got the first coat on. I'm touching the back of my hand, okay? It's dry. Just cool, but not wet and not sticky. Here's the patch. So now we're gonna do the same exact thing. We're gonna get some adhesive, do the same thing, another light coat around the entire thing. On this one, we're paying close attention to that seam, making sure we get that on there. We'll let that one dry. I'm gonna go back here, take our patch, same thing. Second thin coat. Making sure we get it out all the way to the edges. Remember, the edges are the most important because if it starts coming up, it will peel. Now, let's talk a little bit about, there's another tool that we use. MEK will also reactivate this glue. So if I were to get this completely dry and I put this patch down and I got a little bit out of place for whatever reason, or I got a fold or a wrinkle in it, you can take MEK a little bit, peel up a corner, and start working MEK underneath the patch. It will reactivate this glue. So you can take the patch off, rip pretty easily, put a little MEK on it, wait till it dries again, and then put it back down, and it will reactivate this glue. So it's not a lost cause if you make a mistake or get a fold or a bubble. You can reactivate it with the MEK. So our second coat of urethane glue, it's dry, okay? So we're ready to apply. So we're testing it, looks good to me. Couple tools that I like to use. This is a heavy-duty vinyl roller just from Home Depot or Lowe's. It's got some weight to it. This is to roll out any air bubbles. I've actually also got a screen roller here in my hand, and typically I wouldn't use that, but because we've got this seam here and I really want to get this patch down right tight to that line, I'm going to use this screen roller. It's just a round roller and it's made for rolling screen spline in, but it does a good job of getting down next to that seam. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this guy. I'm going to start at one side, and I'm going to start on the side where the seam meets up on this particular case. And I'm just going to go inside my pattern, and I'm going to slowly fold this down up here to my line where my joint is. Okay, and then I'm going to lay it down flat. Now, if I were to pick this up right now, I would be able to pick it up. So don't be alarmed if your corners aren't really sticking and you're thinking, wow, I didn't use enough glue, or if you used 2 layers of glue, you used enough glue. So now I've got it down. I'm going to take this roller and I am just going to start rolling from the edge across, working my way from one edge to the other. And I'm going to do the same thing up here, putting quite a bit of pressure. I really want to get any air bubbles that are between the patch and the boat out of there, and that's why I like using this roller, because it's heavy and it creates equal pressure. I'm going to come this direction now, making sure that there is no extra air bubbles maybe from this direction. I'm going to take this screen roller now, and right here where that joint is, I'm going to put some pressure right down, running along that joint. Sometimes these are a hard one to patch when you're right next to that double bottom or that chafe. You got to really try to get that to adhere down tight. Air between that is really where your failure is going to come on any patch job, is if you've got air in there. Here in Colorado, we don't really have a big problem because we don't have a lot of moisture. Humidity in the air can be a problem too. So the lower the relative humidity, it can take this longer to cure. If you had to do a patch down on the water, you might want to give it more time before you fill that back up. So there's one final step. Some people may not like this step because it puts excess glue. I really like to do this. Just for me, it's a little bit more security. So I'm going to take just a little bit more of the urethane glue, and I'm just going to make a little ring around the outside between the patch and the boat. I'm not too worried about the looks of having this yellowing glue around here. I would prefer to have a little bit extra glue than I would have a failure. And this just gives me a little bit of security. So this isn't necessarily needed. This is just something that we like to do to make sure that this is not going to fail. The other thing it does is it creates a little bit of a ramp so you don't have a hard edge between the boat and the patch. So it's going to create a little ramp so when you're in the water, that water can just go up over that ramp and it's not creating friction on the edge of the patch. So the recommendations on the urethane glue is don't re-inflate for 24 hours. It does say in a pinch, if you're on the river, you can do this in 2 to 4 hours and re-inflate. Typically, if I'm doing a patch on the river, I would prefer to use Terraid just to get me off the water so I can get back to a controlled environment and I can do a real patch here. If you have to, give it as long as you possibly can. If you've got to be off the water, then you're going to have to do what you need to do. But based on what the directions are, don't re-inflate for 24 hours. 4 hours at a minimum, it says. You'll have to make that determination if you're making this patch on the river. So there you have it. We've done our PVC patch. We're ready to go. We're just going to wait and inflate this. In 24 hours, we should be good to go. Again, with boat repair, it's not if, it's when. Make sure you take your patch kit with you. Really important that when you go on the water, you're prepared for anything that might hit you. For us at TFC, we'll see you on the water.
There's a fish.